Hello everyone, I am Envoy of the Dark Abyss, and I welcome you to my video. This video is about my personal list of The Legend of Zelda games in order from least to favorite. Keep in mind that this is only my opinion and it is not fact. Please wait until the video is complete for questions, comments, and criticism. Thank you for your consideration. Enjoy the video. Number 10 on my list is the very first Legend of Zelda. This primary installment introduced elements, characters, and gameplay that would last to entertain and shape the series. I personally found the game to be quite colorful for its time. The enemies, surroundings, and dungeons looked great, not to mention the save feature brought to the table, which proved extremely successful. We were also welcomed by Link's arsenal of items, which of course many of them are typical nowadays, but back then to use the raft or find a secret with the classic bombs was a thrilling feeling. The original Link vs. Ganon game, and it deserves to be remembered and enjoyed. Number 9 on my list is The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. I feel Minish Cap is an impeccable charm that will put a smile on your face but still remains a provoking Zelda title. The expansion on Vaati from the original Four Swords game was great. That being said, I think one of Minish Cap's strong suits is the characters. Certainly Vaati and Eslo, your outspoken companion, are both memorable, thoughtful, and intriguing. Minish Cap also brought the ability to shrink to the size of a Minish or a Picori, if you will, which gave exploration and puzzle solving for the Legend of Zelda series a literal new angle to play an adventure through. The music for the game filled the feelings of adventure, warmth, setting, and sadness. Like every Zelda, it has its new items, which helped it stand out and be more than just a handheld game, allowing new actions for Link and deeper gameplay. Minish Cap, I think, is a staple title for Zelda handhelds. Because these two specific titles had so much connectivity and relevance, they go hand in hand as my choice for number 8. The Zelda titles for the Game Boy Color, aside from Link's Awakening and DX respectively, were successful in the creation of two new antagonists, code system, and two spacious worlds on such a small screen. Separately, Ages focused more on time travel, as Seasons focused more on controlling the seasons. However, in length, both games were relatively the same, 8 dungeons and a final boss. The games deserve this being said. On their own, they are original, tasteful stories and compelling adventures that can be satisfying on their own. It is taken a step further as the plots are deepened by what the true evil is behind the primary antagonists of each title. Even the games can be connected to real secrets, items, new character interaction, and so on. The developers made good use of Link's Awakening engine, producing 2 more games of notable originality and entertainment. As simplistic as Game Boy Color music goes, I loved how it included familiar Zelda tunes and presented new and amazing melodies. Sadly, I feel this dynamic duo is overlooked by other Zelda games, and each is worth a play for anyone, both seeking familiar Zelda characters, elements, and music, while still welcoming new characters, music, and gameplay elements. Number 7 on my list is Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess was a great basis for the future of motion controls for Link as it was built upon and further developed in Skyward Sword. The ability to swing your sword, shoot your bow, and so much more was very fun and was effective creativity and logical thinking to harness the Wii's capabilities. This really felt like a fresh way to play as Link and experience a Zelda adventure. The graphics for Twilight Princess felt realistic, not too gritty but not too colorful either. Attention to lighting and surrounding was a conscious effort here, especially with the epic soundtrack contributing to the mood. Instances of racing on opponent across Hyrule Field, traversing the Gerudo Desert, and immersing yourself in the sacred grove. These are only a few examples of how the music complements the mood of the surrounding. I also felt Twilight Princess strive to bring out the emotions more in Link and other characters. His reactions to others in danger whom he cares about, or facing enemies, seem to affect much more in a direct manner, as opposed to other Zelda titles where the reaction isn't as heavily portrayed and is oblique. Even as a silent protagonist, this is effective because I think it makes us understand how Link feels about others much more clearly, besides what is implied in dialogue from other characters. His resolve on situations he is faced with are also better understood because of these reasons. Despite this great addition, Link still retains the silence, so nothing is taken away. Number 6 on my list is Wind Waker. Wind Waker brought a lot of things to the table that I enjoyed. Firstly, the graphics. Being fully aware of the controversy of the cel-shaded Link, I personally liked it very much and welcomed it. It was a fresh style of Link, and for how different it is makes it that much more memorable. Beyond Link, the entire world was very colorful and very distinct because of this art style. Even the enemies benefited from it. I loved how the moblins looked, even more than they did in any other Zelda. The gameplay was also very fluid, puzzles satisfying to figure out, and combat entertaining. The implementation of Link being able to react to attacks made it that much more fun, and was evolved into even greater combat. This is easily seen in Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. The Wind Waker attitude in Link also started a positive trend. Essentially, it's a much more light-hearted Zelda adventure that has a specific charm that I feel has been passed on to certain Zelda titles. These include Four Swords Adventures, Phantom Hourglass, The Minish Cap, and Spirit Tracks. Wind Waker also provided a new way to adventure, sailing. The ability to travel the sea, go treasure hunting, fighting pirate ships, battling menacing sea creatures, and having the feeling of exploring an unknown island. Of course, Phantom Hourglass took on that idea too. I think Wind Waker did it very well. Finding treasure, which has existed since the first Zelda, found a new way to retain the joy of opening a chest, but in a new way which was collecting it from the seafloor. Wind Waker indeed had your familiar Link vs. Ganon plot, but I like how it felt unique in terms of gameplay and storytelling, even until the very last few seconds of the game. Yet still retaining all familiar elements of gameplay and the story makes this mixture of a charming warm Link battling the evil Ganon we all know successful. Number 5 on my list is A Link to the Past. Despite the SNES hardware limitations, and even by today's standards for the video game industry, A Link to the Past remains extremely enjoyable. Its darkness survives and its adventure remains. A Link to the Past for the time deepened in plot and added much more variety and interaction to the characters. Backstories could be told with much more efficiency, hints were expanded upon, and you felt that much closer to the adventure and characters because of this advancement. Link to the Past brought us some of the most well-known and beloved Zelda tracks, such as the Dark World theme, Kakariko Village, and so on. I found the items in A Link to the Past to be creative and at the time quite astounding. Link could turn invisible, shoot ice and fire magic, and even move very quickly. Absolutely amazing considering the first two games' limitations. A lot of content was found on the overworld as well, both light and dark. This was great for finding secrets and adventuring through the different environments such as the Zora River opposed to the desert. This is only furthered by only being able to reach certain areas by traveling through the Dark World. Speaking of which, the Dark World was a great addition because now you had not only one, but two lands to adventure through, explore, and immerse yourself in. I also really enjoyed the boss fights in A Link to the Past. They complemented their specific dungeons so well, and even to this day I think they're so much fun to battle. Number 4 on my list is Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening is one of my favorite stories ever written in the Legend of Zelda franchise. The story itself starts out simple, but as it grows, becomes much stronger and much deeper. This, of course, is seen in many Zeldas, but this was originally released on the Game Boy and was jaw-dropping at how good it was. Because the setting of the game takes place on an enigmatic island, it felt motivating to keep on playing to discover more and more of your unknown surroundings. To me, this Zelda felt a lot less linear because of the support characters Link interacts with, specifically the girl named Marin who aids him when he is shipwrecked on the island. The game's atmosphere worked exceptionally well to every point in the game. There was absolutely no rush to rip through this particular Zelda, yet at the same time I was so curious and amazed at the progressing story and well-balanced difficulty of each dungeon, even later in the game. The amount of content and adventure and all the familiar aspects of Zelda we love were jam-packed in the palm of your hand with the Game Boy. The bosses were a lot of fun as well, and even a lot of creativity was shown in the dungeons. Without a doubt, my favorite handheld Zelda hands down, but not my favorite Zelda overall. We have three more to go. Number 3 on my list is the latest Zelda hit, as of right now, of course, Skyward Sword. To start, Skyward Sword has exceptionally amazing gameplay. With the expansion of the Wii Motion Plus, you can swing Link's sword in virtually any direction. This is only the tip of the iceberg. The Motion Plus is also used to solve puzzles, used with items, and so much more. Even classic Zelda mechanics are reintroduced with this amazing, addicting way to play a Zelda title. Easily with the gameplay alone, it's a very strong title. The artwork for Skyward Sword is inspired by Impressionist art, which makes the Zelda backgrounds look beautiful. An example of this would be the moving clouds in the sky. It looks like a painting with the appropriate brush strokes while still moving as clouds should. Another great thing about Skyward Sword is the amount of culture and diversity in it. An exceptional example of this is the allegory in Ancient Cistern, which is actually based off a Buddhist myth called the spider web. The Link at Skyward Sword also appears to be a mixture of the Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess links. He, amongst the environments and enemies, is colorful but has a solid amount of realism to his shape and actions. With the addition of the diversity in combat, with Link's sword comes much smarter enemies. The enemies will watch your movements and block appropriately, and if they land a blow, are not merciful about it. Simply hacking at enemies like a brute will get you killed, as some enemies can only be killed in specific ways. The bosses are an excellent example of this. I felt that the bosses were absolutely amazing in this game, some of the most well-created, tough, and enjoyable ones I've battled. Skyward Sword also continually makes references to past games frequently, notably because this year, or last year I should say, is the 25th anniversary of Zelda, so simply paying homage to all those past games I know and love. Skyward Sword is also the prequel to Ocarina of Time, so it's very interesting to see how the story before Ocarina of Time was developed. I think that the story was very original for where the series is currently, and worked greatly with every other aspect of the game. Skyward Sword's soundtrack is also completely orchestrated, and of course sounds very epic whilst playing the game and adventuring. Overall, it's one of the most immersive, fresh, and memorable Zelda titles I've played. 2 more to go. My number 2 is indeed Ocarina of Time, and of course it has to be on the list. It's Ocarina of Time! Anyway, Ocarina of Time was in my opinion the most accessible Zelda. The introduction or tutorial, if you will, was crystal clear and at a comfortable pace. Not too slow, yet not too fast. The controls were very easy for me to use. I found the items and magic to be very creative and fun to use. It was just so cool to use Naira's Love, or shoot an ice arrow for instance. The variety of items was excellent. You could crush enemies with the Megaton hammer, or you could use the Lens of Truth to find treasure and traverse through the House of the Dead, or the Shadow Temple if you will. Ocarina of Time also introduced the concept of Z-targeting, an amazing battle mechanic that still to this day remains effective. This Zelda has an amazing flow in terms of story and gameplay. The flow is comfortable between each dungeon, like the story, as Zelda stories are generally progressed through dungeons. The fact that you must pull the Master Sword and become an adult to defeat Ganondorf was amazing. That feeling when you first pull the Master Sword is unlike any other. Even being able to play as both young Link and adult Link is awesome, traveling through time to see how different Hyrule is. I also like how Ocarina of Time helps shape and personify the Link that enters Termina in Majora's Mask. In my opinion, no other Zelda title fulfills the role of the typical premise of a Zelda game, gathering in a certain amount of sacred items or objects, in this case the 3 spiritual stones and medallions, before fighting Ganon better than Ocarina of Time. Essentially, it has the strongest quest in terms of collection of compulsory objects in a Link vs. Ganon Zelda title. That being stated, I can confidently say, in my humble opinion, Ocarina of Time is the embodiment of the Link vs. Ganon game, conceptualized by the original Zelda, built upon in A Link to the Past, and perfected in Ocarina of Time. And my number 1 The Legend of Zelda game is Majora's Mask. To start, I feel that Majora's Mask is the most creative Zelda I've played. The amount of diversity in gameplay, story, side quests, and so on. As many know, Majora's Mask allows Link to assume the shape of a Deku, Goron, and Zora. These are only the essential forms too. Each form has its strengths and weaknesses respectively. For instance, Deku Link has the ability to hop across water and fly through the air for a short time with the use of a Deku Flower, but will burn if he comes into contact with an enemy harnessing fire in combat. In contrast, Goron Link has strong physical attacks and can speed across the land quickly, with the use of magic to attack with spikes while doing so, but cannot swim. Link also has an arsenal of weapons and masks at his disposal. Masks have the ability to affect certain characters in different ways, whether it is making them freak out, making them angry, or triggering a side quest. Each has its functions. The surroundings and environments in Majora's Mask are fantastic. The poison-filled swamp, to the freezing mountains, even down to the graveyard have so much to look at, and so much about them to enjoy. A major gameplay mechanic of Majora's Mask is the time limit. Essentially, a time limit was placed there for both challenge and atmosphere. If the 3-day time limit has reached its ending point, the game would end and you would lose. So to combat this, Link has his trusty Ocarina of Time to use the Song of Time to repeatedly go back to the first day, completing different parts of the game before facing the final boss. This is really cool to me because it is much more challenging, but having the ability to control that challenge and use it to your advantage makes it that much more fun. This is taken a step further by slowing down or speeding up time. I absolutely love the story in Majora's Mask. It, in my opinion, is the darkest, most cryptic, most thoughtful, and most surreal Zelda ever produced. The character interaction is very high in Majora's Mask due to the side quests, a world-ending plot, and deeper characters. In other Zelda titles, I found a lot of the characters to be forgettable or mundane. Not all, mind you, just some, but in Majora's Mask, you are watching the characters live their lives, even with their doom approaching closer with each passing day. Interacting and helping these characters feels much more fulfilling in my eyes. The story and character interest is further strengthened with each area of Termina Link must aid before reaching a respective temple. In regards to story content and actual gameplay, I find the fluidity of it, even with having to reset back to the first day, great. It's not a typical flow of side quests or adventure, but because there is a feeling of your doom and the feeling of urgency, it works quite well. Certain points in the main game are saved even when reset, so you'll access past areas much quicker for a variety of reasons. Majora's Mask is also very compact in the layout of the game. I like this because it shows how much depth and content could be fit and still feel spacious. This also means that nearly everything in the game is relatively close to you, but to actually progress to it is where the classic Zelda puzzles and thoughts come into play. Because Majora's Mask is filled with side quests, I see this as an extreme positive. Of course, the side quests reward you, but my main point is that it feels like many Zelda adventures that complement, and I think complete the main quest with. The different races you help, mini games, meetings, photography, and so much more. I'd also like to add, to see the drastic effects of each side quest and the ending of them. I really like how this has been a direct sequel from Ocarina of Time, shows where Link journeys next, as the game says, quote, in search of a friend. I personally have the strongest emotional connection to the Ocarina/Majora's Mask Link for that reason. A big reason Majora's Mask is my absolute favorite is the amount of metaphors and messages in this game, both subtle and fun. To name a few, friendship, healing, loss, and probably the biggest, childhood. As I said, these are only a few as there's too many for me to name right here. I adamantly feel that if you want what Majora's Mask truly offers, play every bit of it. I'm not trying to sell anyone anything here. I just feel that you will not get the full experience out of the game without the completion of everything. So, there you have it. That is my list of the top 10 Legend of Zelda games. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them down in the comments section. What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? What could I have done?